Welcome back, Weeers and Weeboos, to the Child Edition Doge, where today we're going to be covering Maggy, or Magdalene if we're using her proper legal name. But let's be real, everyone just calls her Maggy. That is when anyone even brings her up in the first place. It seems like she's one of the most, forgotten characters in the Binding of Isaac, except maybe the literal forgotten. Maggy has a lot less going on than Isaac does, so honestly, I could probably cover basically everything there is to this character, at least in terms of pure mechanics, in like the first minute here. At least past this intro. We're not counting yet. Maggy has identical stats to Isaac, except for the fact that she also starts with 15% less speed compared to Isaac, but gets to start with a bonus heart, making for a total of 4 red hearts, which is the most amount of health that any character can have in the entire game at the beginning of the game. Also, instead of starting with a D6, she starts with Yum Heart, an active item with a 4-room recharge, which when used simply heals 1 full red heart. And that's it. You gotta remember, this is one of the classic Flash Isaac characters. They have been here since day one, and a lot of these characters are a lot more basic. However, I think that Maggy is particularly bad on this aspect, to be fair, just because while there are other characters in the original Flash Isaac that are relatively simple, a lot of them, at the very least, kind of encourage slightly unique playstyles, even if in very subtle ways. But Maggy, for the most part, doesn't really encourage much of a unique playstyle, at least in the long term. So with that being said, considering we already kinda covered the character like a couple minutes in, what's the rest of this video about? Well, it'll be about a whole lot of discussion about how I feel about Maggy as a character and how I think she could be improved, as well as why I feel so conflicted about her. You see, I don't really believe Maggy is a well-designed character, at least for the modern Isaac player. However, I also admit, I kinda like Maggy. I do enjoy playing Maggy runs, even though I genuinely don't think she's a super well-designed character. So I want to get into a little bit of why that is. But to start with, my impression of Maggy when I was new to the game was very different from my impression of Maggy now. So I want to talk a little bit about my first experience with Maggy first. And yes, before anyone mentions, I did leave out one little detail that Maggy does have an unlockable. We will get to that. But at the time I was having my first impressions of Maggy, I didn't have this unlockable, so we're talking about the version of Maggy I was playing as a new player, just to begin with here. I took an interest in Maggy, to be fair, mostly to be a contrarian, because of the fact that while I didn't hear much hate for Maggy or anything, I also, as someone who'd just been watching the game for years and not playing, had probably seen the least gameplay of Maggy than any other character in the game. It just seemed like no one ever wants to sit down and play Maggy, at least not for a video. And that kind of interested me. Was this character being underrated or overlooked? Was it maybe the case that this character's a lot stronger than people give her credit for, or a lot more fun or interesting? So I played a decent amount of Maggy going in, and I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty disappointed. First of all, although I'd heard it already, you really need to play the game and experience it to understand how true it is that speed is directly tied to your survivability. You will just get hit more if you're slower. I know that sounds very obvious, but trust me, if you haven't played Isaac with low speed before, and you've only watched it, you really don't understand how much more you get hit just because you're slow. So Maggy's extra tankiness, while not literally irrelevant, does feel somewhat cancelled out by the fact her lower speed means she is going to get hit more. But still, I don't mind, just from a pure design and fun perspective, the idea of a character that gets hit more but is more able to take those hits. It could be good for those who are consistency pilled. However, I still didn't really like Maggy going in. And I'll be completely honest, maybe this isn't really the game's fault. You see, I could be completely wrong here, but I do get the impression that when Isaac was first being made, there are definitely a lot of things they expected of the average player that aren't exactly how people actually play the game nowadays. And I could be completely wrong here, but I get the impression that devil deals were originally supposed to be quite a rare thing. Something that like, oh wow, you actually got a devil deal this run, that's so cool. Rather than the reality that now, with modern Isaac, it's kind of expected that you're going to get multiple devil deals every run if you're playing the game to a half-decent standard. The reason I bring this up is one of the most frustrating things to deal with as Maggy is the fact that to get value on your character, you have to get hit. But if you get hit, you don't get your devil deal. And like, those are pretty important. Considering the fact that Maggy's also more likely to get hit because of her slow speed, it also means maintaining your deal chance even if you want to actively choose that over getting Yum Heart value is really, really frustrating. Worsening the situation is the fact that personally I feel like there's more urgency to get your deals as fast as possible with Maggy. Having 4 hearts to start is an amazing head start, but it also isn't really that strong in the long term. That doesn't mean I think in total having 4 red hearts to start is not that impressive, it is, but to make it impressive you have to leverage that strong head start to get some sort of big value that you wouldn't be able to get if you started with less hearts. If you just spawn with more hearts but never actually leverage that head start to actually get any long-term value, all it means is that when you get to the womb and onwards where everything starts dealing double damage, best case scenario, you have 1 extra hit compared to before, which really isn't that impressive and not worth throwing away your D6 compared to playing Isaac. So what I'm basically saying here is one of the most important things to do with Maggy is leverage your large health bar to get a devil deal ASAP. Most characters in the game usually start with either no red hearts or they start with around 2 on average, which is awkward. If you get an early floor 2 devil deal and you haven't got an HP up in your first 2 floors, if you got something amazing like Brimstone or Twisted Pair in your devil deal, you wouldn't be able to take it because it would just kill you and the game would be over, which would suck. But with Maggy, you could happily take a floor 2 Brimstone even if you don't get a health up, and you'd still have half your health left, which is amazing. This definitely seemed like one of the biggest advantages of playing Maggy is that you can get that early floor 2 devil deal and get maximum value off of it, consistently and safely without ever deleting your health bar by accident in the process. And don't get me wrong, you can do that, but to do that, you not only have to no-hit on a character that's very bad at dodging, but you then also have to literally just not use your Yum Heart. And yes, I do know that self-damaging mechanics do exist and don't take your deal chance, but we will get to that. That's a point I want to get to later. For now, just take self-damage mechanics out of the picture and talk about base gameplay if you're playing casually. If you're talking about that casual experience, then Maggy can be a frustrating character because it feels like there's a push and pull going on between leveraging your health for devil deals and actually using your Yum Heart. It feels like there's no way to get value out of both of these things at once, but it feels like without getting value off of both these things at once, why the hell are you playing Maggy instead of Isaac? I mean, to be fair, it's not like Isaac is supposed to be a very balanced game, I admit that. Obviously the game intentionally has some characters that are garbage, and it's not necessarily supposed to be that every character is equally strong. Even still though, I think that applies better when you're talking about characters that are literally designed to suck and be challenge characters. But clearly Maggy is not designed to be a challenge character. If anything, she might be one of the most beginner-friendly characters in the game, just in a quite frustrating way. Where yes, you can have a very, very large safety cushion and you can get hit a lot and not die, but if you want to have all that leeway, you do not get to have nice things. You don't get to get devil deals, you don't get to get nice items, you just have to play a really, really boring run of Isaac. But hey, when you keep making mistakes, at least you can heal them back. So yeah, when I was new to the game, I was a little bit disappointed with Maggy. Now to address the elephant in the room, self-damaging mechanics. As most of you know, you can actually get value off of both your devil deals and also your Yum Heart if you just abuse self-damaging mechanics, to essentially leverage your existing HP pool for value without having to lose your devil deals. This is true, you can do this. And it's not like I wasn't aware of this when I was first picking up Maggy, I was trying to do that. But I was under the impression that I was being screwed by RNG when I was playing her early on, because I just had so many instances of begging to see a single blood bank and not finding a single one. So I essentially came to the conclusion that while self-damaging mechanics can make the character move more smoothly, at the end of the day, it's too inconsistent trying to find them. And it does feel like your entire run, whether you get to have any fun or not, can be decided by complete throw of the dice. Now over time, I've kind of turned a little bit on this opinion. The main reason being, well, something of a broader concept. There's like a common issue in the Isaac community where people might see their favorite YouTuber or streamer do extremely well and get insane items, and they'll be like, oh my god, YouTuber look, streamer look, oh my god. And sometimes, you know, it can just be that classic lazy Matt man look. But generally speaking, in a lot of cases, it is less so that, oh, my streamer is so lucky, my YouTuber is so lucky, and more so that when you know more about the game because you played it a lot, you know how to manipulate the odds so that you have the highest chance of getting lucky. It's less so that they always get lucky, and more so that they find ways to get chances to get lucky 5 times more often than the average player. And so in the end, they are more likely to eventually hit the jackpot and get lucky, but the reason they're more likely is something that was born out of game knowledge and skill. I think this came into play a little bit with my early impressions of Maggy, where I felt like self-damaging mechanics didn't spawn anywhere near as consistently as I wanted them to. And so I constantly just felt like my character was doing nothing. But then the more and more I've played the game, the more and more I've been able to figure out ways to get value off of self-damage on almost every floor I walk into. When I was newer, I didn't really value cards very highly, and so if I had an opportunity to buy cards from the shop, or buy something like a starter deck, I would almost always pass it up, which means I wasn't getting temperance cards to spawn blood donation machines. When I was newer to the game, I didn't realize that entering a new floor with missing hearts massively decreases the chance of you seeing a sacrifice room that floor. When I was newer to the game, there were a lot of self-damaging items I considered to be garbage that I later realized I had severely underrated, like Sharp Plug, Habit, and Fanny Pack. And credit where it's due, unlocks also help. Of course, it's easier to find self-damage once you unlock things like confessionals and hell games, which provide more ways to do it. Either way, nowadays when I play Maggy, I see self-damaging mechanics far more consistently, and while some of that is just I've unlocked more things that can spawn that can help me with that, a lot of it is just I've learned how to take things which don't always directly give you more self-damaging opportunities, but generally speaking, if you take the chance that it might, you're going to find more opportunities to self-damage and it's going to become more and more consistent. And usually any one of these things seems like an innocuous little detail which changes almost nothing. But once you start combining all of them together consistently into your runs, the chances of finding what you want just skyrocket. I think this is why I actually do quite enjoy Maggy now, even though I still don't think she's the best designed. I very much like being able to leverage and trade resources, including health as a resource in this context, to be able to get rewards. I love game breaking, I love taking it slow and sludging, and I'm just going to be real with you, Maggy's a pretty good character for that kind of thing. With all that said, I think I've gone long enough without talking about Maggy's unlock, because I'm going to say this. Most character unlocks, other than the D6, seem to be things that most people kind of disregard as not all too important. And you know what? Maybe there's a good reason for that. A lot of unlocks are pretty meh for most characters. But if I had to say one unlock that is the most underrated in the entire game that upgrades a character, it would be Maggy's. For beating the April's Fool challenge, which heads up is a pretty tough one, but one that if you're patient, you probably could beat with just a little bit of practice. You will be rewarded with a message that says, Maggy now holds a pill. Now that might not sound very good at first, because if it truly was just a random pill, that would be no better than Lazarus' starting pill, which is usually not too useful. However, it's a bit misleading, because this is no random pill. This is always a full health pill, every single game. Now, why would this unlock be so underrated? Well, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that on surface level, it looks like all you get for unlocking this is a one-time use full heal. Which, I mean, technically that's true. However, unlocking this pill grants 3 sneaky bonus benefits, with each benefit becoming sneakier than the last. And I guarantee you, unless you've read the wiki like I have, I am a nerd and a scholar of the wiki. I will refuse to engage with a mechanic that I don't fully understand the inner workings of, so I read the wiki on goddamn everything. And I'm telling you, the last benefit is one that I'm pretty sure literally no one will know unless you've read the wiki. But let's start with the least sneaky of the sneaky benefits, that being the fact that you start with a full health pill also means the full health pill is identified from the beginning of the run. So in future, if you see any more full health pills, you will know they are full health pills immediately. This is better than it sounds. Already being able to identify pills is valuable, but like on a small scale. But I think in particular the full health pill is one of the most important pills to have identified, so it is especially valuable. Maybe this is just me, but in my experience, I almost never get value off of full health pills in normal runs. Not because they're bad, but because almost always I pick up a pill, I don't know what it is, and I'm not really going to take damage anytime soon, so I can't really get my health low first. So it's just, well, I do want to know what the pill is, guess I'll eat it, and I get a full health pill while I already have full health and it does nothing. And sure, that is kind of good, because in future if I see that pill again, I'll know what it is, but a lot of the times, with how many pills are in the game in each run, a lot of the times you won't see that full health pill again, and that would have been the one that you got all run, and you'll never be able to use it. Meanwhile with Maggy, not only do you get one to start, but if you do only find one full health pill all run, then you'll have it identified and be able to use it immediately to its fullest extent. But that brings me on to the second slightly more sneaky benefit, which is to do with a hidden mechanic in the game called pill pools, which I think a decent amount of more experienced players will be aware of, but maybe not all of you are aware of. You see, essentially, there are actually more pill effects in the game than there are pill colors. And so every single time you start a new run in Isaac, it actually selects a bunch of pill effects to put into the pool for that run and excludes a few. So every time you start a new run, there is a chance that there will be pill effects that just don't exist in your run. You might spend hours looking for a full health pill that doesn't exist. You might eventually find every single pill of every single color in your run, and none of them will be full health. However, because this unlock forces Maggy to start with a full health pill, that also forces the full health pill to exist in the pill pool every single run. So all these little benefits are starting to add up. Not only do you start with a free full health pill, but on top of that it's identified, so the first time you find a naturally generating one, you'll be able to take it correctly rather than wasting it by accident because you didn't know what it was. And on top of that, you actually effectively increase the chance of finding more full health pills as well, because you never have to consider the possibility they aren't in the pool. This is already starting to add up to quite a lot of value for a single unlock that most people brush off. But there is one more giga sneaky benefit of unlocking this pill, and that is that it doesn't just put the full health pill into the pool for every single run. It also throws the health up pill into the pool for every single run with Maggy. Don't know why, it's just a nice little bonus I guess. You just always have both full health and health up in your pill pool if you have this unlock. This makes pills a whole lot more valuable on Maggy, because every run you have a guarantee that you have massive health value somewhere in your pill pool. And that's all before mentioning the elephant in the room, the real reason why the full health pill is so good. Floor 1 Sac Rooms.
What?
Sacrificial rooms, understandably so, mostly go ignored by the casual player. They are these rooms where you obviously hit yourself on the spike and try and get rewards. Hell, even I, out of curiosity because I didn't see people play with them very often, wants to dabble in them when I got my hands in the game, but I very quickly realized that I was often not getting value off of them and decided to start ignoring them. I really can't blame any casual player for thinking these things suck, but if you didn't realize, these are actually some of the most powerful rooms in the game if you know what you're doing. You see, you got the general idea that, oh, you hit the spike and you get rewards, but it's random what happens, but I very much had the wrong perspective at first. I thought that every single spike hit would take from the same pool of possibilities, that there'd be a really large pool of hundreds of things that could happen whenever I touched that spike, and that essentially every time I hit it, it just rolls the dice and gives me something. Now don't get me wrong, I was aware the more spike hits you do, the better the rewards get, but I assume that might just be upgrading the results from the pool, but not really changing the fact that you're still drawing from the same general pool of things that can happen when you touch the spike. However, it's better to think of this as a series of coin flips, where the reward for winning each coin flip follows a certain order that changes with each spike hit. I am down so bad for Sac Rooms that I might have literally every coin flip memorized. Oh god. So this is off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure this will be accurate because at this point I've got it burned into my skull. Spike hit 1, 50-50 chance for 1 coin. Spike hit 2, the exact same, 50-50 shot for 1 coin. Spike hit 3, 2 in 3 chance to receive a blessing, which increases your chance of getting an angel deal over a devil deal, but doesn't increase your chance of getting a deal as a whole, if you know what I mean. Spike hit number 4, 50-50 chance at a grey chest. Spike hit number 5, 2 in 3 chance for a stronger blessing. If you miss the blessing, it gives you 3 coins. Spike hit number 6, this is the first big one, 1 in 3 chance to teleport immediately to your angel or devil deal room. If you miss that, you get a grey chest instead. Spike hit number 7, 1 in 3 chance for an instant free angel item to spawn in the sacrifice room. If you miss it, you get a soul heart. Spike hit number 8 is 7 troll bombs every single time with absolutely no RNG involved. Spike hit number 9 is also a guaranteed Uriel fight, the blue weaker archangel. Spike hit number 10 is a coin flip between either 25 coins or 7 soul hearts. Spike hit number 11 is a fight with Gabriel, the red stronger archangel. And spike hit number 12 onwards, every single hit is a 50-50 shot to instantly teleport to the dark room. Now I know that's a lot, but unfortunately the important ones to remember are 6 and 7. Don't Don't say anything. Don't say it. Don't say it. 6 and 7 are the big two, and it's really convenient that they're right next to each other. A free deal on a floor where you wouldn't have gotten one otherwise, or a free angel item are amazing rewards to get. And yes, it's only a 1 in 3, however, if you go to 7 hits, you get both rolls, which means it's 2 1 in 3s. If you do the maths, that's about a 55% chance that you at least get one of the 2 rewards, and either of them would be amazing. The only other spike hit I think you should really try and remember is spike hit number 10. In most situations, it won't be quite as big a reward as spike hit number 6 or 7, however, it's a great fallback option if you miss both your 1 in 3 shots with 6 and 7, because of the fact that it always gives a reward no matter what. It's just a 50-50 for whether you get money or soul hearts, but either way, you get a ton of either one of those things. Typically the money is the slightly worse option, but you can't complain too much about 25 coins in most cases. So yeah, general wisdom for playing Sac Rooms effectively is don't play them unless you can get to at least 6 or 7 hits. And if you're scared that you might die while playing them because you get too greedy, my recommendation is make sure you can at least go to 10 to get some sort of guaranteed reward. And if you do want to go to 10, check if your shop has any red hearts or soul hearts for sale that you can use that money to buy if you happen to miss the 7 soul hearts. Now I'm talking a bunch about Sac Rooms because, as most people will know, Maggy is kind of the Sac Room character. If she has an identity, it is this. As you can imagine, Sac Rooms are busted if you can actually play them on floor 1. But that's the thing. You want to go to 7 hits at least, usually on floor 1. And that's a lot of hits for floor 1. I mean, most characters can't survive more than 2. And sure, you can get red hearts to drop, but how many red hearts are dropping on your first floor? Most characters can't even get close, and at best might be able to clutch a 6 hit if they get really lucky. But then there's Maggy, who, with the unlock where you get the full health pill, is actually capable, even in a worst case scenario, of consistently reaching 7 hits in the Sac Room without dying on their first floor. Which is insane, because that means you can get a floor 1 angel deal when that's usually impossible under normal circumstances, and on top of that you might also get a free angel item just in the Sac Room as well. This is how you end up with floor 1 sacred hearts or floor 1 godheads that just lock in the W from the literal first 2 minutes. Obviously Maggy starts with 4 hearts and can go down to 1 by taking 3 hits. Then you can use the full health pill and take another 3 hits, which is already taking you to 6. And even in a worst case scenario where no red hearts spawn, and the Sac Room is the last room that you find on the map, so you don't get a chance to recharge your Yum Heart, just 1 usage of Yum Heart is enough to take you to 7. And of course, in most cases, you'll get better value than that. You'll get some hearts to drop on the floor, and your Yum Heart will get some recharges in most cases. So usually you will be able to reach 10 and make sure that even if you get unlucky and miss both 1 in 3s, you still get something. Now honestly, the longer the game goes, it does become kind of true that normal red heart drops are usually more than enough to play a Sac Room if you save them. At least assuming you're not taking too many hits you don't need to be taking. So you don't really need to play Maggy to get value out of Sac Rooms, which is kind of true by the late game. But that's the thing. The earlier you can get a free angel item, the longer it has to snowball and the easier it makes your run. It is true that Maggy for the most part only really gets a head start on Sac Rooms, but as the game progresses, the difference between playing a Sac Room with Maggy and a Sac Room with Isaac becomes less and less noticeable. But the fact that Maggy can play Sac Rooms so early is still very, very valuable. Not only for the head start aspect, but also because you're often going to see Sac Rooms on floor 1. I already mentioned you need to enter a floor with full health to maximize the chance of getting a Sac Room, but there's actually a very secret second condition. If a dice room spawns, it actually replaces your Sac Room, so you want your dice room spawn chance to be as low as possible as well if you can help it. But usually you can't, because the condition for a chance for a dice room to spawn to be increased is having 2 or more keys when you enter a floor, which is going to be very common past the first couple floors. However, on floor 1, that is the only floor where every time you play it, you will have 0 keys and full HP every single time you enter it. So you always have the maximum chance of 35% of getting a Sac Room on your first floor every run you play. Which makes sense from my experience, because I swear I was seeing a Sac Room like every other first run in the first floor and seeing them so much more rarely beyond there. To be fair, I think a lot of that is just happenstance because the chance difference isn't enormous, and it felt enormous to me. But honestly, even figuring out this chance difference exists does explain a lot for me. Either way, yeah. Maggy not only gets the strongest head start off of Sac Rooms, but also has the highest chance of being able to abuse them, because obviously most people can't abuse a floor 1 Sac Room, and she can, and that's the floor you're most likely to get a Sac Room on. Although I acknowledge that the head start that Maggy can get on some of these mechanics is important, I also think this is kind of my big problem with Maggy's design. Even if I still enjoy playing her, the thing that I don't really like about her design that I think really could be improved a lot is that, quite frankly, I feel like most of her mechanics don't actually give her any long-term advantage, again, unless she can leverage it for a head start that snowballs. Starting with 1 extra heart is amazing for the first few floors, but everyone gets HP ups as the game progresses, and eventually it really won't matter having 1 extra heart, especially when you're throwing away stat boosts and so many other more powerful potential starting items to get that extra heart. The big thing for me is I don't mind the idea of a character whose identity is to be slower but tankier. That's fine with me. The problem is, I don't think that the way you do that is just add a character that starts with slower speed and more health. I think you need to actually add a character that incentivizes people to focus HP as a resource. And I guess you could make the argument that's what the Yum Heart is for, but listen, can we be real for a second? I do acknowledge that Yum Heart is like the only item Maggy has that actually continues to have long-term value, but like, it also sucks. Like, there's worse. I'm not saying Yum Heart is a garbage item or anything, but like, if we're talking starting active items that most characters in the game have, let's be real, Yum Heart's gotta be pretty low on that list. 1 heart isn't a lot, 4 room recharge is a lot, and the fact that you can't really keep a consistent uptime on being able to use this item, at least without throwing and taking unnecessary damage constantly, is a big reason why I just think Yum Heart isn't that good. So how would I improve Maggy? Well, to be honest, I've got so many ideas that I think I just have to kind of scattershot here. I'm not necessarily saying that all of these should be implemented, or even that only one of these should be implemented. Probably maybe a combination of 1 or 2 of these ideas would be the best approach, but exactly how you want to do it, I'm gonna leave that up to you. I'm mostly here to spitball ideas. Again, the main thing for me is I want to see a way for Maggy to actually get long-term value for focusing HP and focusing on her identity, rather than feeling like she needs to sacrifice her identity on the altar of the devil on the first floor she possibly can so that she can finally actually be a decent character. With all that said, one of the simplest and first ideas I had was simply the idea of making Maggy get more value out of getting health ups. At first, I was thinking something pretty boring, like maybe every 3 or 4 health ups you get a bonus heart, but that seemed a little bit hard to track and a little bit boring. Eventually, though, I came up with an idea I like much better. Considering that Maggy has a bit of an angel theming going on, with most of their unlocks being angel deal items, I feel like it would be fitting and also very good for making this character less rage-inducing if every time you got a HP up, you also got a one-time use Holy Mantle hit. Kind of like you used a Holy card. While this might not seem ideal because the bonus isn't a permanent benefit, it does effectively mean you have 1 extra hit, and more importantly, mantle hits protect your deal chance. So you can still leverage your mantles from getting HP ups to make sure that if you get hit on a floor before reaching the boss, you don't lose your deal chance. And you could even have a sort of strategy be implemented where if you have multiple HP ups that spawn on 1 floor, you might actually want to wait to take them on purpose so that you take 1 until that mantle breaks and then take the other 1 to play the rest of the floor out. That'd be a pretty simple one, but if you wanted to go even harder on the idea of making the deal chance experience less punishing for Maggy, I really like the idea of giving her the Act of Contrition effect. If you're not familiar with that item, it provides a tier boost and a Eternal Heart when you pick it up, but I don't want either of those things in this case. I don't want her to get stats, I would like her to get the 2 special effects, which are, for 1, if you have this item and you take a devil deal, you still have the option to take angels, which I would like considering that Maggy usually wants to take a devil deal on floor 2, but then wants to take angels from there on out, but obviously usually that's not possible, and it'd be nice to give her that option. In general, I like the idea of having a character who has a bit of an identity of being able to switch between devils and angels more easily, and I'm kind of surprised that isn't already a thing. On top of that though, Act of Contrition also reduces the deal chance penalty for getting hit on a floor. So even if your Holy Mantle gets broken and you do take red heart damage, while you'll still be punished, it won't be as severely on this character. Which again, considering this character is so slow, and you're basically intended to take red heart damage on this character with Yum Heart, I feel like it's fair enough to reduce the penalty just a little. Here's where we get into some slightly crazier ones though, and just to be clear, I recognize you might have to nerf other aspects of the character to implement some of these. I'm fine with that, I just don't want to get into the weeds of talking numbers when what's important here is the design. Either way, a slightly more crazy idea I had is I love the idea of Maggy starting with the Maggy's Faith trinket. The only issue with that is that Maggy's Faith is one of the strongest trinkets in the game. It makes it so that every single time you enter a new floor, you start with an Eternal Heart, which to be fair can be difficult to protect. However, if you manage to reach the end of the floor without the Eternal Heart ever taking damage, it becomes a new heart container, effectively becoming a health up. If you can protect the Eternal Heart consistently, this trinket is literally a health up every single floor. And considering a health up is, in fairness, on the lower end of items, but, you know, that's still as good as getting an entire item. Having that every floor as a trinket is insane. So I recognize that this would be too strong on its own, and if you were going to do this, you almost certainly would have to reduce her starting health as well. But I do like the idea of Maggy having Maggy's Faith, because then, once again, it actually makes having a large health bar a long-term identity. You don't just have a 1 heart head start, you're actually getting more hearts the longer the game goes on to work with. Lastly though, is probably my favorite idea. Funnily enough, I can't even really credit myself with this one, although to be fair, it's probably not one that's too out there, and I'm sure other people have thought of it as well. Back when I was still quite frustrated with Maggy the way she was, I was talking to a friend who's played the game a lot more than me, and at the time I was still relatively new, and I didn't know all the items that existed. And essentially I was saying to them, I just feel like Maggy should have some kind of effect where she gets some, even just small, permanent benefit for healing herself or picking up red hearts. I personally was thinking of Soul Locket, something like that, the item where every soul heart you pick up gives you a small, permanent random stat boost. Well, as it turns out, what I was asking for kind of already exists as an item in the game. Maggy's Beast unlock is Candy Heart, which basically makes it so every time you pick up a red heart for the rest of the run to heal yourself, you do get a small permanent stat boost. And honestly, I kind of like the idea of just giving her that. To be fair, I don't think it would actually work with her Yum Heart, but even still, I feel like it fits with her identity, it would be fun, the stat boosts are relatively small, so it shouldn't be too out of hand, and it would make it feel worthwhile to really commit to healing as an identity with this character when that healing actually gets converted into permanent stat boosts. So yeah, there's my sort of scattershot collection of 4 different ideas. Mantle on HP up, Maggy's Faith trinket to start, active contrition effect from the beginning of the game, and/or Candy Heart effect from the beginning of the game. I think those would all be great ideas to improve the experience of playing Maggy. With that said, that only leaves her unlocks, and we've actually already mentioned a couple of them. I generally consider Maggy's unlocks to be very underrated. I've heard very little about the idea that Maggy's unlocks were particularly good when I was first getting into this game and looking up what unlocks people tended to recommend. But I have been very impressed with the stuff that she unlocks. It might just be a playstyle difference, but a lot of these items to me, I feel are underrated and don't get talked about a lot when really, I think they're quite effective. To start off, her boss rush unlock is Maggy's Bow, a health up that also makes all heart drops heal double for the rest of the game. I get the impression people consider this item to be mid, but I would definitely disagree. I'm not saying it's game breaking or anything, but I do think it's pretty huge value, and if you know how to leverage your health to get resources, then this can pay out big time. If you get this with a humbling bundle as well, so the hearts start doubling up, my god man, it is like infinite HP. Imagine getting 4 hearts worth of healing from a single health drop. Unfortunately, of course, as always, both the Mom's Heart reward and the reward for beating Mega Satan are just useless co-op babies that don't do anything. So skipping those and going instead to Satan, unfortunately this is one of the only unlocks that is not great for Maggy, that being Guardian Angel. It's basically just an orbital that blocks shots for you sometimes. It's not god-awful, but it's not great, and the main issue with it is that it's a not great item that's in the Angel item pool. So, if it was just a treasure room item, it wouldn't be the worst, but it wouldn't be great. The main issue is that this is going to show up in your Angel deals. You could be getting this instead of a Sacred Heart or a Godhead. So yeah, I'll confess, this is a really bad unlock. However, from here, for the most part, it's all good. For defeating Isaac, you get a cross. It's an item that I think a lot of people consider to be pretty underwhelming, but I actually feel it's kind of underrated, even if I admit it might be a little bit boring. It's just a little familiar that spawns a soul heart every 7 to 8 rooms you clear, and to be honest, I think that's good. I feel like a guaranteed baseline bonus soul heart every 7 to 8 rooms is enough that most players who are relatively consistent can basically tread water at the very least and stay alive unless they really fumble the bag at some point. Once you get this item, you very rarely lose health for the rest of the game. Not to mention those soul hearts are great deal protection, especially for the later floors once you get to like the womb. The unlock for defeating the lamb is the already mentioned item Maggy's Faith, which again is a genuine contender for best trinket in the game, so like, that's a pretty damn good unlock. And for defeating Blue Baby, you get the Celtic Cross. Another item I think most people aren't so hot on, but I think is pretty damn good. It's an angel deal item that randomly grants you invincibility when you get hit sometimes, but the chance is relatively high, and the invincibility time is pretty long, 7 seconds if I remember correctly. That's all before I even mention the fact that the chance of the invincibility increases with luck to a relatively large degree. So if you manage to get a build where you have a decent amount of health and a high luck stat, then you can become really tanky with this item. The real reason why it's so good though is it doesn't even just have to be used for survivability. It also triggers on self-damage effects. So when you have Celtic Cross, blood banks become absolute money printers. Because yes, if you didn't realize, you're actually still allowed to play blood banks while you're invincible. You just get the reward without taking any damage. While Celtic Cross is simple, the fact that it can be scaled with luck, the fact that the invincibility it provides lasts very long, and the fact that it works with self-damage means I think it's a great money printer, I think it's great for being tanky, and I think it scales really well, especially if you're going to play slow and game break. Moving on to greed mode, for beating normal greed, you get Censor, which is a controversial item, because simply put, it is technically busted as hell. Aside from the fact that it can create undodgeable attack patterns with some of the final bosses in the game, which can actually cause it to be one of the worst items you could possibly pick up in some situations. It's a familiar that follows you around with a big glowing aura, which massively slows not only all enemies, but all enemy bullets that enter it. Once you have this thing, for the most part, you are never going to take damage again. Like, genuinely, it is so easy to no-hit almost every floor you walk into once you get Censor. If we're talking about how good Censor is for 99% of the game, it is genuinely like a broken, busted S-tier item. The only problem is, once you get to the Beast, or you get to Mega Satan, the fact that it slows down bullets means those bullets stay on screen way longer and don't move much. And when you have bosses that shoot thousands of bullets all over the screen, you start having issues where you just have walls of bullets that won't despawn, that aren't supposed to be there, that can completely block the gaps you're supposed to be running through when you're trying to play the fight normally to dodge the attacks. That is the reason why a lot of people swear against Censor and never pick it up. I'm going to acknowledge that, but I'm still going to fight for a little bit of Censor's honor. Maybe this is just because I struggled the most with the early game and I am much more consistent with the late game in Isaac, but in my experience, Censor is still worth picking up in most cases, and I still think it's an amazing item. Don't get me wrong, do not pick up Censor if you're playing a challenge character and you're going to Mega Satan or Beast. If you're playing a character that is going to die in 2 to 3 hits no matter what, and you are going to go fight Mega Satan or the Beast, you are going to get killed by this thing, and you should not bring it. But if you're playing any non-challenge character, or even if you're feeling a little ballsy, if you're going to a different boss that maybe isn't quite so bad with Censor, I still recommend taking it. It is just insane the amount of hits you won't take leading up to the end, because the fact that Censor makes all those rooms just so easy. And quite frankly, it doesn't happen that often. Usually, if you do bring Censor to the Beast or Mega Satan, it will cause you to take 1 unavoidable hit, maybe 2. Which, don't get me wrong, is not good. But if you can just tank 1 or 2 hits, again, it's a busted item. For the next item, I'm going to have to quickly post-edit in a new recording of what I think of it, because in the initial recording I had to confess I've barely gotten it. Even though I've had it unlocked for a while, this game just really doesn't seem to like giving me this item. I'd only ever had it once when I first tried to record this, and in that run I was already stupid broken, so it was kinda hard to notice if it was doing anything. However, in my infinite wisdom, I decided to selflessly and heroically procrastinate on this video long enough that I now have actually had a run where I got Glyph of Balance as my first angel deal item, being able to make good use of it throughout the course of almost an entire run. Having had that experience now, I gotta say, I'm converted. I never really was a Glyph of Balance hater, but I also hadn't really been fully convinced of its strength. That being said, it did wonders for me in this run. Glyph of Balance is an item that gives you 2 soul hearts, but more importantly, gives you a very unique special effect that every single time you clear a room, your room clear reward will always be converted to exactly what you need the most. If you're about to die, you'll get hearts. If you're out of bombs, you'll get bombs. If you're out of keys, you'll get keys. And in most cases, especially when you have a decent amount of just about everything, it gives you money. Don't get me wrong, we're not talking big amounts of money, but we're talking every room you clear, you get this money. Long story short, your ability to play shops gets so much stronger if you have Glyph of Balance, especially because you won't ever have to waste any money on buying any bombs or keys if you run out, since the Glyph of Balance will just immediately plug that hole for you the second you run out of resources. As a result, you can save your money for buying cards and items, and while sure, if you want to be picky, there are definitely better money-making items out there, almost every consistent money-making item is a pretty damn good item. This is its own can of worms that I could go on for a while about if I wanted to, but generally speaking, while early in the game you might not get this impression, the longer you play this game, the more you'll realize that shop items are some of the most powerful items in the game. Typically, they might take a lot more work to get off the ground than a lot of other items you might see in normal runs, but if you're willing to put in that work to get the maximum value out of your shop items, most shop items really bring quite a lot to the table, certainly much more than treasure room items do and boss room items. Once I got Glyph of Balance, it just felt like I always had money to spare to buy the items in my shop and then still have a few cents left over for if I felt like buying a card or something. So yeah, I gotta say, while this item's a bit controversial and it seems to be a bit of a love it or hate it thing, I'm definitely in the camp of love it. I think this item is really, really good. For beating Hush, you unlock Purity, which, funnily enough, was the only Maggy unlock I was particularly pointed to as, oh, this is a good one, get this one. And don't get me wrong, it's a pretty good unlock, but I feel like it was nowhere close to Maggy's best unlock, and it's almost a little overrated. That being said, I won't be as contrarian as to say it's not a good item. Purity is a pretty simple item. It provides a massive stat boost in one of 4 random stats, either range, fire rate, damage, or speed. When you take damage, you lose the boost, but when you enter the next room, you get a new random boost of the 4. For the most part, fire rate tends to be the best one. Damage is good, but has a bit of diminishing returns. The more damage you already have, the more underwhelming the damage boost is. Speed is really good unless your speed is already high enough and you don't really need a big speed boost. And range is the only one you just flat out don't want in basically all cases. Purity is a fine item, it's an angel deal item, so a huge stat boost is like serviceable, but I don't feel like it's particularly notably good for an angel deal item. Especially considering it's a stat boost that's constantly re-rolling that you can also lose for an entire fight just for taking one hit. Now that being said, the next item, Eucharist for beating Delirium, is the best Maggy unlock, and I can't believe no one mentioned it to me. Eucharist is an insanely good item where once you pick it up, it's usually just an instant win. It makes it so that every single floor you have a guaranteed angel deal no matter what. The only way you pick up this item and don't win the run is if you're only getting it in like the womb where you've got like no angel deals left. So long as you get this with 2 or 3 angel deals left at least, this is almost always an instant win. By far Maggy's best unlock and one of the best unlocks in the game, I will die on that hill. Unfortunately for defeating Mother, despite being a tough boss, you don't get the best item. You get Yuck Heart, which is one of the only remaining bad unlocks I would say for Maggy. It's just a version of Yum Heart that gives rotten hearts instead of normal hearts, which break more easily but spawn flies. It's not that Yuck Heart is awful, it's certainly not as bad as the Guardian Angel, at least this is just in the treasure room pool, but it's definitely not the best item, especially for beating such a tough boss. And finally for the beast, we already mentioned Candy Heart is the unlock, which I do consider to be pretty valuable as well, although I haven't gotten it all too often to be honest. Overall, I really think a lot of Maggy's unlocks are underrated and extremely powerful. But if I had to say which ones I would say are the most important to go for, I would definitely say you want Eucharist ASAP and you want Maggy's Faith ASAP. With all that said, that's Maggy. A character that definitely hasn't been tread all too well by the sands of time. But I definitely think there's still a lot to salvage in this character, and there's so much you could do with her to make her so much more interesting. Hope you enjoyed, and next video, it's time to go gambling.
Let's go gambling!
I'll see you then. Goodbye.